Welcome to GLHF. Today we bring you 10 games that every gamer should play. We obviously know there are more than 10 games that every gamer should play, so put down yours in the comments below before you watch the video and give the video a quick thumbs up before we begin. Let's start this list off with number 10, League of Legends. Most Dota players and probably some League players are hating this pick right now for several justifiable reasons, which I'm not going to get into. Yes, it's not a balanced game, and in terms of power creep, it's probably the biggest offender in the gaming world, but the reason I put League of Legends in this list is because it popularized the MOBA genre and became the most played game in the world for a reason. The gameplay is a bit more fun and engaging than the other competitors, and the game has made the genre more accessible to the casual crowd. If you haven't played a MOBA game yet, League of Legends is probably the easiest one to drop into and do some damage. Number 9. Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1 is objectively the best Battlefield game, one of the few masterpieces that came out in modern day gaming. The only knock against it honestly is the war it's based on. Since World War I is way less popular than World War II, I think that honestly every gamer should play one of the good Battlefield titles and not necessarily just Battlefield 1. I just chose Battlefield 1 because it's objectively the best. The Battlefield franchise took the FPS genre and combined it masterfully with some sandbox elements that created a whole different creature. Growing up as a teenager with Call of Duty as my favorite FPS back then, Battlefield was a breath of fresh air and truly a unique take on the genre that I think everyone should experience. Throwing 64 players into a map with different customizable vehicles, 4 unique classes, and destructible environment created one of the most fun sandboxes to play around in. It seems like the next Battlefield title is going back to the modern era, which is great, so instead of you, I would jump on it as soon as it comes out. Number 8. Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 was my first entry to the series, and it was the best one in my humble opinion. The story is pretty decent and it has one of the more interesting villains in the gaming world, but what had made the single player experience amazing was the great design and animations. Going through the healing animations during a battle, where you pull out a shrapnel or fishing a projectile out of your hand with a stick was badass. On top of that, you had a great open world which was very fun to play and explore back then, whether it was the hunting missions that synergized so well with the crafting mechanic in the game, or just clearing out the island's enemy posts. I'm pretty sure it's not the first, but it's definitely one of the best, if not the best, open world FPS game out there. I have spent hours upon hours doing all of the activities around the island before I even touched the main story, and that's why Far Cry 3 is a great case for an open world game that is relatively simple and not grand in scale, but very successful and fun to play. Number 7. Pokemon games. There are few games with such a simple premise that do so well for more than over 2 decades, like the handheld Pokemon titles. And obviously I'm not talking about Pokemon Go. Picking out your starter and then going on to an endless adventure trying to catch them all is something I have done dozens of times, and each time it's just as fun as the first one. I always find myself playing one of the Game Boy Advanced Pokemon titles on my phone, or one of the unlicensed multiplayer games, just because it's so easy to sink your time into. That's why the games are still popular to this day, and if you don't know why, that's why every gamer should play them and give them a shot. Number 6. Shenmue. Shenmue is easily in the top 5 favorite game franchises of all time for me. Coming out in the end of 1999, the game was so ahead of its time and arguably created the open world genre itself. There was never such an interactive 3D world where you can interact with almost everything around you, engage in content that's not directly related to the game's progression like the arcade, and having to go to a certain place during a certain time of the day because of the NPCs around you having their own schedule. All of the things that I have mentioned right now are basic tenets to almost every modern open world game. The game also combined quest time events, which made the cutscenes way more engaging and always kept you on your toes. It was one of the few games that used cinematic techniques to portray the story, and the original soundtrack underscored the entire experience very well. Every gamer should play Shenmue to see what the first 3D open world game felt like. See the origin of all the open world concepts that we took for granted being created through a very limited hardware and divided to 3 separate CDs. Number 5. GTA 3. If Shenmue is the grandfather of 3D open world games, then GTA 3, which came out only a little less than a year later, was the grandfather of 3D open world sandbox games. Unlike Shenmue, you can go into every vehicle that you can see in the game and drive it. Pick a fight with every NPC around you, engage many of the missions in more than one way, or just say F it and go on a rampage killing everyone around you. Playing this game back in the day was so much fun. I remember a few of the computers in my school actually had them installed illegally by students. Whoever was lucky enough to land on a computer that had the game and finished his assignment ahead of time got to go on a 4-star rampage through the city after we put in all the cheat codes we had known at the time. Back then, there were rarely any non-arcade games which could be so much fun and open without even doing the first mission. Every gamer should try GTA 3 to see where the 3D universe of GTA had started and the OG 3D open world sandbox genre had begun. Number 4. Half-Life. I won't go ahead and pretend that I originally played Half-Life when it came out. Growing up as a teenager, I was mostly a console gamer that played a few free-to-play multiplayer games on PC. Half-Life is on this list because it's directly and indirectly affected almost every FPS game that came out after it. First of all, in terms of storytelling, it was the first game that had the action happening right in front of you, instead of going into a cutscene every time something interesting was happening. The game didn't take control away from you, so it can play the pre-rendered scene to tell the story. It actually let you stay in control and experience the game from a first-person perspective. On top of that very important storytelling element in FPS games, Half-Life had spawned several mods that became full-fledged games like Counter-Strike 1.6, which was a Half-Life mod that became the first game in the series that brought you CSGO. Game number 1 on this list was actually heavily influenced and relied on the same storytelling technique, just like Half-Life. Can you take a guess in the comments of what game I'm referring to before we get to it? Number 3. Half-Life Alyx. It's a bit hypocritical of me to put 2 games on this list that I barely played one after the other, but the contribution of the Half-Life series to gaming and the FPS genre is unavoidable. The Half-Life series also helped VR by introducing the first full-fledged AAA title designed strictly for virtual reality, Half-Life Alyx. It's certainly not the best game in some aspects like physics in VR, which in my humble opinion is way better executed in games like Boneworks. But having a game that ties a lot of those VR mechanics together and a new installment into one of the biggest franchises in gaming is exactly what VR gaming needed to become more mainstream. Half-Life Alyx not only brought a lot of new players to virtual reality gaming, but it encouraged way more developers to dip their toes into this industry, which would bring in turn more new players and even more high-effort titles into the platform down the line. This is the future of gaming. Number 2. Minecraft. Minecraft is truly amazing for a couple of reasons. The game is a sandbox in the most literal form and one of the best in the genre. And the amount of things you can do today in the vanilla Minecraft survival mode is a testament to it. As someone who had played the first 1.3 beta of Minecraft, I would have never guessed the game would be such a huge hit with this simple of a premise and graphics. I would never have thought of it to be the game to dethrone Call of Duty, which ruled the gaming world and YouTube back in the day. I can't tell you how fed up I was though to see all the new Minecraft-esque survival games spawning around it like Fortress Craft and many other titles that capitalized on the trend and lack of availability in some platforms. If that's not enough for you, then the fact this is the best selling game in the world with over 200 million sales should do it. How can you not play the best selling game in the world? Number 1. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. Call of Duty 4 is a must-play masterpiece. The campaign is great with many memorable quotes and iconic characters. The pacing is also great, and it almost seems out of place for a series like Call of Duty, which is now known for the action-packed, crazy adrenaline overload, Michael Bay type story mode with a lot of over-the-top sequences. The multiplayer is great even in today's standards, with most of the elements in the game actually being useful and pretty balanced. You must play Call of Duty 4, but it's not because it's a timeless masterpiece and a true classic from the series. You should play Call of Duty 4 because it's the grandfather of almost any modern first-person shooter since 2008. Never have we seen before a game that combined a persistent profile that levels up from game to game and unlocks customization based on your performance and progress. Class setups so you can engage the game the way you wanted to, and kill streaks as a reward for being a competent player. If that wasn't enough, the gameplay was super smooth and with glorious 60 frames per second on consoles back in 2008. But all of that doesn't matter. What is your opinion? Which game do you think every gamer should play? Make sure to leave it in the comments below, and on your way down there, make sure to also like the video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our future videos. Thank you guys for watching, good luck and have fun.